All right, so planning and development on January 23rd, Counselor Andress.
Here.
Counselor Gwaltney. Counselor Wolverton.
Here.
Counselor Sims.
Here.
And Counselor Nels.
Here.
So Counselor Gwaltney's absent, but you have 4 present, so you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I will begin with a motion to dispense with the reading and approve the minutes from our last meeting.
Motion.
So moved. Okay, motion from Counselor Wolverton, second from Counselor Nelms. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes 4-0. Okay, old business 10/12/22, public hearing set for January 30th, 2023 at 6 p.m. for consideration to rezone 3101 Overton Drive from NPD Neighborhood Preservation District to an R7 attached dwelling unit district. The applicant is Virginia Allen to permit the construction of a 4-unit townhouse development. The Planning Commission had a vote of 0 to 7 for an unfavorable recommendation. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Councilor Andrews. So Ms. Allen couldn't be here tonight, but Jamie Shransky is the architect and Sarah Powell are on their way up. Okay. And so I'm going to turn it over to them.
Okay, if you will first sign in, please.
Sure.
He went to get a clipboard.
Oh, he did, okay.
You said
And-
you're, I'm sorry, you're the landscape architect?
No, he's the architect.
The architect.
The architect.
James, J-A-M-E-S, Saransky, S-R-A-N-S-K-Y, Israel and Associates.
And James, what we're going to do tonight is just sort of a truncated version of what we'll do next week at the public hearing. So if you'll take 20 minutes,
Okay.
and then I'm going to give the other side 20 minutes as well.
Okay.
So-
You go ahead and start. If you want, he's going to bring the thing. You can sign it when you get through talking.
Okay.
I can have that as a pointer to point it.
Oh, nice. All right, thank you. As stated, I'm James Saransky. I'm the architect that Jenny Allen approached to help her with this project, present this project. And I think I heard Kel explain why Jenny's not here to present herself tonight. She contracted COVID into last week, and her doctor recommended, even though she was outside that window, and she just didn't feel safe being here due to doctor's orders, basically. Anyway, all this map is taken from the City of Homewood zoning map. This is the said property. Jenny's current home and residence is 3101. I was just going to explain and orient everybody. This is Piggly Wiggly down here at the corner. And everybody knows Oxmoor Road. So as you traverse down Oxmoor Road, you've got C2, you've got C1, you have this R7, all this is C1. This is a mixed-use development, Hallman Hill, and that's, I'm not really sure what that building is, but there's this Shell station there.
The Bell South.
It's the Bell South building.
Shell South building, okay. And then this is OLS down at this opposite end over here. Or OLS's properties kind of meander through here. So, for just starters, I mean, and I just wanted to point out too a couple other things. What we're requesting is a residential reclassification of this property. We're not looking to make this into a commercial property. It's kind of a transition space that I think this city can value and appreciate. Coming from commercial directly into residential, you know, it's kind of abrupt because there is a higher level of density that can be built into a commercial zone property than a residential property. And R7 is restricted to the same height limitations as NPD is. So with that being said, this development right here is an R7. It's really the only shared property line with this particular development that's here. Even across the road, there's an undeveloped little small portion of property here. And then when you see all that encounters her property currently is Crescent Avenue from all the way down here at the Village Mall, which is a C1, C2, and then you traverse that entire length of Crescent. It's all commercial, and it dies into her property. I think it's a rather unique piece of property in the sense that I can't think of one other property that has a commercial street, basically, that dies into a residential home, a single-family home. And I don't know of any other NPD properties that back up to basically 5 residences on one piece of property. So again, she is somewhat penalized because of that, in the sense that I've heard the term spot zoning or spot development. If anything, that definition when I looked it up to kind of make sure I was understanding it properly, the definition that I came across is the zoning of a small irregularly shaped parcel of land differently from the zoning of the surrounding land. So the way I interpret that, the surrounding land is commercial, R7, and then, I mean, a lot of people here tonight are probably going to say, well, it's NPD because it looks like us. It kind of functions like us currently, but we're here about planning. When you're planning something, it's not about the house, it's not about the building, because buildings do change and evolve over time, but what is the city? What would the city do? What does this mean to the city? Because it is part of Oxmoor Road, and part of this development that they have a future plan for, I'm sure. Again, I'm just presenting that as an option because this was given, some treatment of being able to be developed as R7. This was, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with those developments. I think that those are valuable to this type of neighborhood. This neighborhood, people can live in these areas that can't maintain a single-family home, do not necessarily have kids in the school system, or a smaller retiree of sorts that just needs a smaller yard to maintain, but wants access to their neighbors, access to their friends, and access to the community that they lived in. And that's what we're trying to develop, hoping to develop here. Keep in mind, we're asking for 4 units on this property. This has 11 units. This one has 8 units. This one has 5 units. And there's some others sprinkled in the overall master plan of Homewood, or the current zoning of Homewood. So I don't think we're overstretching in terms of asking for an R7. R7 is residential, might I add. It's a transitionary space that I think makes for a good community. That may be in my opinion alone in this building tonight, but that's just how I see it. I know there was a lot of questions and concerns of the neighborhood. There were a lot of letters that were written to the city, so I was going to try to address some of those briefly as much as I could. I didn't have to read the letters. Jenny read them and relayed to me what she felt were important issues that everybody had.
Well, you might not mean to interrupt you, but this is an entirely different body, and so a lot of people
I'm
haven't
sorry.
seen the original plan. So if you want to share those, I know that some of it got sent out to the committee, but
Well, last time we can go on to the next slide. I limited it to 4 slides tonight because development itself, the last time we presented, Jenny and myself, we were told that they really didn't care what it looked like. This was more about the zoning. This was more about the reclassification of basically this property. And so maybe we overstepped in what we thought people would want to see, elevations, what it might look like, and all those sort of things. So we've excluded those tonight for that very reason, is because I felt like maybe that was putting the cart before the horse. If people want to see it, we can go backwards to that, but I think that there's a lot more background here that probably needs to be explained ahead of time. But one of the things that was presented this is what we're proposing. Basically, a 4-unit property. This looks like this is a separate unit, but these are attached as one unit. It's a larger because it's a corner unit. The density of this is more than an NPD project, but so is commercial, so's a lot of other things to help transition to this residential unit. You can see we've incorporated landscaping. The parking will be in the rear, so we're not adding any parking in the front that would potentially obscure your view or prevent the opportunity for people to traverse back onto Oxmoor as they currently do. So Jennifer, if I needed to show pictures of more things, we can get to that. I don't know if I can do all that in 20 minutes time.
Oh,
but
sure.
if we need
Okay.
to address it,
Next week.
we didn't really go into it much last time. It was kind of shut down. So.
I just wanted to make sure everybody, and we'll get to
Can we go
questions,
back to
but-
the other slide real quick? There you go.
And there's a bunch of handouts of that. I have one, but it looks like that's
Yeah,
what he's
people
got.
do want to see them or have questions about those particular things.
I didn't know what those were.
But I was going to hit on the setbacks real quick because somebody was concerned about the setbacks. So like last time I mentioned, Setbacks for a residential community such as MPD are approximately 25 feet or more, depending on the neighbor. Going to an R7 would limit you to allow you to develop to a 24-foot setback. That's here. What we've done is we've had porches here so that, in essence, puts the mass of the building back here, so the transparency is maintained. We may be open to going to the 25-foot there, if that's a necessity. 9-foot setback, that's part of this, where it would be 10-foot if it were NPD, as I understand it. This setback would actually be 12 feet off of the alley. We have a 5-foot easement here as well, but that's part of that 12-foot setback that's along this side. And this really, we could, in essence, as long as we adhere to the fire coding of what we would need to do along this, a 0 setback. We're not looking to put this building at a 0 setback because we'll need room to turn cars in and park underneath these units. So that's not our plan. This one piece is set here purely to just help block that view down, which would be more of asphalt or some sort of paving surface. And the elevation changes here from, this is the high point of the lot, this is the low point of the lot. So this is a 1-story unit here to blend with some of the character of the current homes that are still remaining along Oxmoor Road, but there's not many of them left. But this is just a hint at the past of what was here, kind of hopefully the future of what's here, and then again preserve the past homes that go down Overton. Stormwater. Stormwater was brought up last time, and they talked about lot coverage and some different issues of that nature. We're going to be required to adhere to the stormwater ordinances that are in place. So we have engaged with an engineer. His name is Ben Watson. Has done a lot of detention systems in the city. We're using them on a smaller NPD residential project on another street. He looked at this and he said, I'm just going to quote him because it's easier. It says, there's plenty of room for an underground system under the rear parking area if needed. We can also provide a chamber system in the front yard to collect, drain, convey as needed. As it appears, the front yard will also drain to the rear. So what he's saying is that without doing calculations, without doing that stuff, he already has a game plan in mind for if this project does go forward.
Is that Ben Watson? I'm sorry, Watts.
Ben Watson.
W-T-S-O-N? Okay.
Yes, of Live Oak Engineering. Last meeting, like I said, touched on the aesthetics. We didn't bring that kind of information tonight. Again, the thought was we're going to use similar materials. We're going to use a mixture of brick, primarily, siding, again, for permits. Proportions will blend with and the roof slopes are going to plan to blend with some of the neighborhood aesthetics that are back in the neighborhood. There probably was some concerns of traffic or school system impact, but all I would say to that very briefly is that these are going to be 4 units, probably with single or just couples that live in and reside in these. One price point is not going to be, it's not going to be a family-friendly setup necessarily. Each of these units were intended to have an elevator. This one primarily Jenny wanted for her own personal use, and then these other 3 units would be something that I don't know if she's decided, but I think that those were going to be developed to be either sold or leased or something to someone else. The reason I say that about the traffic is because, you know, a family with 3 kids like I have that drive, you might have 4 cars already, maybe 5 cars that both parents have a vehicle. Sometimes they even have an extra vehicle. And all these vehicles are going to be hidden behind all this because there's going to be 8 parking spots underneath this and an additional parking spot underneath that particular part of the development as well. So there'll be a total of 9 parking spots that are going to be for these units. So, and the traffic patterns will be just like everybody else's under the circumstances, because there isn't really a pathway here. This is just a 10-foot alley, but it doesn't connect to this 30-foot alley over here. If it did, it would give everyone another pathway, and possibly a pathway for strollers and the things that have to traverse this kind of scary road right now. If I had a tricycle riding preschooler right here, I would be very nervous. But if this really did connect through and was a city alley right here, it probably would be advantageous to everyone. But that's not part of tonight's discussion. But I did want to point out, this is the alley. This is Mr. Shaw's home here. Mr. and Mrs. Shaw's home here.
You should just give it back.
So I guess we could look at the next slide. This is just going to be an existing survey, I believe. So this is Jenny's current home. It's a one-story home, and it's cute. Nobody's going to say that it necessarily isn't, and it does blend with the rest of the neighborhood. But nobody else has Oxmoor Road right here. Nobody else has R7 along the longest property line of their home. And they have an alley here that has been disputed as to whether or not that's truly an alley or not, but I've talked to the city, even had the city attorney describe to us what an alley is, and I can read that real quick just so everybody knows for record what an alley is, and this is directly from the definitions of the zoning, and it says this is in the zoning ordinance, a public way less than width than a street, designed for the special accommodation of the property it reaches, and not intended for general travel. So general travel is main roads.
Can you say that where we can hear it?
Oh, I'm sorry. It says an alley as defined in the zoning ordinance is a public way less than the width of a street designed for the special accommodation of the property it reaches and not intended for general travel.
Not intended for what?
General travel. But it reaches this property and it reaches the Shaw's property. And it actually reaches the properties beyond, which is another alley, which becomes a thoroughfare basically for pedestrian, if nothing else, I think for children. Because this turns where it goes from a 10-foot alley to a 30-foot alley. So there's some lost opportunities up here, but I won't talk about that today because the way that Mayfair Circle's developed, even if you look back at some of the development plans for that particular property, it looks as though a road could tie to that 30-foot alley and give people access from that property out onto Huntington and Whitehall without having to go back out onto Oxmoor, which is sometimes a very trafficked property. And it also gives smaller children and people that want to walk the neighborhood and run or do whatever they want to do with the community or connect to the community, instead of having a cul-de-sac here in the middle of basically an urban development. Seems to be silly. So anyway, again, the longest lot is right here, the one that's shared with an R7. And then you've got your alley access here. This is Oxmoor Road, which everybody's familiar with Oxmoor Road and the C development that's all around it over here. Way past, all the way down to Our Lady of Sorrows. So we're just asking for fair treatment because of this particular property to this property that's somewhat of an island of its own, with the exception of its attachment to this R7. I mean, I can't stress it enough. It's the only shared property line is an R7. So, I mean, if it was shared with NPD, if it was shared with, something else, we might have a different conversation. But I just feel as though this is shared exclusively with an R7. And then even across Oxmoor Road. And then there's this little wedge-shaped piece that's here that it doesn't have a home on it. You couldn't fit a home on it, and I don't think that there's anybody that necessarily owns that property that I could find. But this particular owner here has taken ownership of that piece, I believe. And I may be misinterpreting that, so. So with that, I will just add that again, this is for a different issue, of course. It's kind of my own personal issue now because I have children and I love neighborhoods that connect to give children pathways and people safe avenues for travel. And there's this particular development, one of the citizens did stand up last time and said that he paved that alley and made it his own. So I took kind of that personal because I feel like that's stealing from the city and stealing from the opportunities of the children in this neighborhood. And I just think of all the children on this street that want to play with the children on that street. And they have to go up here, risk their lives. I don't know that, I bet you where I grew up, my mom would have said, don't go up that road. Don't go past this house. Don't go up there. And that's probably what my parents would have said to me if I lived on Overton. But if they had this pathway to connect over to Whitehall and Huntington, that'd be where I could ride my bike. That's where I could go see my friend. That's where we could play in the alley right here. I mean, that's where kids can have fun. So I know it's nothing to do with her property, but again, her reason for this is an elderly population, hopefully, that can age in place here and be kind of the sentinels up here at the end of the street to help protect the people that might traverse this street. One, because of the mass of the building, the orientation of the building, the materials of the building, and help drive people away from looking down into their neighborhood. It's just, if we go back to that zoning map, we can see it one more time, and I'd rather end on that than, well, let's go one more slide, because.
We've got about 20 seconds.
Okay, one more slide, because it's not my favorite slide, but Jenny did this. She spray painted this because it's her property line. She's allowed to spray paint on her own driveway. But what she was trying to point out is this is her property line. This is the alley right here. She didn't plant trees in that alley because someone had presented that she planted trees in the alley. She also said somebody told her that she parks in that alley. Those are not her vehicles. This is her vehicle. She's not here tonight. She might have had something different to say about it. Personally, I wouldn't do that. I feel like that's kind of trying to thumb your nose at somebody, but that's what she did. That washes off. It's just landscape spray. Well, I'm not in, I don't know what she used, but that's what she told me, so I'm just saying what she said to me. Could we go back to I know I have can I have 1 minute, please? Never mind, it's okay.
Okay, well, let me first ask if anyone on the committee or council has questions now, and then we're gonna hear from the other side for 20 minutes. Do we have questions now?
Oh, this is my name, so it's fine.
Okay, anybody? Okay, thank you so much. And so I will let you all speak, and if you will sign in, I'm going to say the same thing, 20 minutes. Divide up as you see fit, as you want to do. And, you know, you can speak first and then sign in to get going, so.
Sorry.
And just really quick question.
Yeah, if you'll speak up here at the front, so the cameras can see you. But don't get nervous. There's only 5 people that watch it.
Paul had a question.
Yes, go ahead, Walter.
So everybody understands, so next week we're gonna do the public
Doing
hearing.
this again.
Yes,
Everybody
I do,
understands
yes,
that
everybody
we're having a
understands that,
public
we have
hearing?
told them
Okay.
that, yes.
I'm sure she
That's why
briefed you
there's
on all that. I
only,
just wanted to-
Walter,
Okay.
they spoke for an hour at planning commission and then the other side.
Well, that's
spoke
what I
for-
read in
So
the
that's why
minutes,
we're
yeah,
down
I
to 20
read,
minutes,
yes,
so, yes.
Yes, okay, thanks.
I know we only had 20 minutes, and I think we'll have some other people that want to talk to, so I'm going to try to go through this fast as I can. But my name's Jim Shaw, and I live next door to the applicant. Let me just say a couple of rebuttal things. That paint on the driveway next door to me, that was not done by a surveyor. That was done by my neighbor who did that with the orange fluorescent paint. So I just want to make that clear. Quickly here, her application for rezoning appears to be intentionally misleading, in my opinion. She claims that her parcel is isolated from NPD, surrounded by C-somethings and R-somethings, which was that's her words, not mine. It's misleading if you don't go by the property and take a look at it. And it's bordered by my property to the south and on the west by 3100 Overton Drive. And every parcel on Overton Drive is owned NPD. So she's part of Overton Drive and part of our neighborhood. If you look at the pictures that I sent to Melody, and I guess the city council got them, you can look and see clearly that there's nothing obstructing the property between her house and mine. It's clearly, we're clearly adjacent to each other, so that shouldn't be questioned. They definitely border each other, and they're definitely both NPD. Now, we keep hearing about this alley, and I call it a paper alley. Now, it's on 1929 map, but that's a paper alley. That alley, or that driveway that I've used exclusively for 17 years, it's where I park, and I park there exclusively. I'm the only one that does that, and same her driveway. So, at one time, there was a garage built in that driveway that's supposedly a paper alley. So the city had to, at some time approve a garage building there.
Well, not
For the
necessarily.
previous owners.
I will say this, just like, I will say that, I think sometimes people do things without asking for permission, kind of like the person who paved the alley to become their driveway. They didn't ask for that.
Yeah.
So sometimes people do things
Well,
without
it's
asking.
been used for some, what I'm saying, it's
Yeah.
been used for something besides an alley for
Right.
decades. I spoke to some owners who live in the area, been here 60 years. For 60-plus years, that's where somebody who lives here is parked in the driveway exclusively. So, the applicant says that she should have,
I'm sorry, I just have a real quick question, Jim. Where the white cars parked, is that a parking pad that y'all added? Okay, y'all
yes,
added a
that's
parking
parking.
pad, okay.
I added that,
Okay,
yes.
gotcha.
But, let's see, so what, 60 years has been used as a parking driveway. And, let's see, where am I? Applicant states that she should have, okay, I'm over here from my notes a little bit, but I may be doing this early, but she says that, the applicant says that, but my property faces Oxmoor Road, okay? And there's people that are R7 all the way from there, Oxmoor Road, all the way up to Piggly Wiggly. That's true. So her application says, therefore, I should be able to get R7 because I'm facing Oxmoor. Okay, then, so say she gets R7, then she's gonna turn around and say, okay, well, now that I've done this, I'm gonna face Overton Drive. And that's misleading to me. That's just misleading. Also, the architect did not show the frontage of the 4 units. The height appears to be misrepresented to a certain extent because it doesn't appear to be including the elevation drop. So just want to mention that. The architect mentioned something about spot zoning. Considering how long the parcel's been zoned in PD, together with the absence of any significant zoning changes in the surrounding property, this application does appear to be a spot zone. And spot zoning is contrary to generally accepted good zoning practices and has been referred to as illegal in some Alabama Supreme Court cases, as I've been told. I'm going to just say this briefly because someone else in our street wants to talk about it, about the permeable surface area of the parcel to the detriment of the adjoining property owners. Water flow into the streets and sewers will significantly increase, and that, I'm not going to say much more about that. We have someone else who's going to speak on that. And that's pretty much all I have. There were some new things that architect stated that I don't agree with, but one thing I want to make very clear is that driveway that I've parked in for 17 years has been parked in for 60-plus years. It has always been used as that. So I just can't see that being all of a sudden changed to public right-of-way and people start coming up and down my driveway. Where am I going to park? So anyway, I thank you for your time, and I believe Mackenzie's going to.
Ms. Shaw, will you please?
And Mr.
Ms.
Shaw.
Oh, yes, sign in.
Yep, thank you.
Who's against right?
All right, I'm going to go for time. Thank you, Planning and Development Committee. My name is Mackenzie Cohen. I live at 3100 Overton Drive. My family with kids faces the applicant's house on Overton Drive. Like Miss Allen, we are a corner lot where our primary street and primary facade are both Overton Drive, like Miss Allen's. Before stating my opposition, I do want to also reference that orange line was drawn by Miss Allen. It was not drawn by a licensed surveyor, so it's unofficial. Mr. Shaw had, so I want to only pull from Homewood ordinance's words. So the Homewood zoning ordinance of an MPD is intended to recognize the historical patterns and densities of residential subdivisions and to encourage the continuation of homogeneous development patterns. My oppositions only reflect present-day ordinances. So I'm going to use the ordinance and Homewood's ordinances terms. Number 1, encouragement of continuation. Her application states for her lot to have the same opportunity of the zone behind her house. Her lot, primary address, is not a continuation of the R7 Mayfair Circle ordinance. As Mayfair Circle entered into their R7 ordinance collectively, 3101 is a continuation of Overton Drive MPD ordinance, as Overton addresses existed at the same time of the adoption of the MPD ordinance, making them a continuous zone. This approval would eliminate the continuation of homogeneous development patterns and not abide by the current definition of a zoning lot, which is when lots or parcels are continuous to each other and share the same ordinance effective date, which we do. Number 2, densities of residential subdivision. 3101 Overton Drive has always been a part of the Overton subdivision since the house was built in 1960. The current density of 3101 Overton is a single-family lot zone. An R7 approval immediately changes the current density pattern of the lot in Overton Drive. 3, densities of residential subdivision. Converting an existing single-home lot to an R7 immediately multiplies population density and increases traffic patterns. The intersection of Oxmoor turning into Overton is already considered a stressed street by the city, as it is defined with 2 street signs, local traffic only and children at play, to reduce traffic and slow down for children at play without sidewalks. The original intent when designing Overton was not intended to support R7 lots and traffic. In conclusion, approval of Ms. Allen's proposal only benefits Ms. Allen at the eventual destruction of MPD zoned neighborhood, in which the Planning Commission has already voted 0-7 non-approval, non-recommendation to the City Council. If approved, it creates precedent of changing from MPD zones to benefit an individual. If she can do it, I can do it, Mr. Shaw can do it, anyone adjacent to an R7 in Homewood can do it, creating a precedent and eliminating the preservation of this designated MPD continuous neighborhood and manipulating current Homewood ordinances. Within her current zone, she can age in place, she can build a new home structure that suits her needs, as most of us do when we transition into different stages of life. We would fully support any changes she needs to make within current single-family lot MPD ordinances. Thank you, and I invite Dr. Johnson to the stage.
You sign it, McKenzie. Sign.
My name is Walt Johnson. My wife Andrea and I live at 3117 Overton. It's about mid-block. We oppose this request to rezone from MPD to R7 for all the reasons my neighbors have already articulated. But I just briefly want to talk about the stormwater management. I've been interested, with all due respects to Mr. Sharansky. I'm no engineer. I'd be really fascinated to see what his engineer has proposed, but frankly, it's irrelevant. The stormwater management plan from January 2022, that I believe is the current city stormwater management plan, doesn't set specific recommendations for stormwater management. It may incorporate by reference multiple documents, but my understanding is there are no specific guidelines. One specific thing I do think exists is that NPD is limited to at least a structural impervious surface area, 50% of the parcel. And there is no such restriction or constraint on R7. This current house on the property would be about, with its hardscaping, 2,700 square feet. If you add the property and the hardscaping proposed without any remediation other than subsurface retention structures, you'd have to attenuate a runoff for a 4.5-inch rainfall event, which Councilor Andrus reminded me happened twice last year. You'd have to attenuate 3,500 square feet of water. That's a swimming pool, and that's the excess amount. So I think we're all being unrealistic when we say we're gonna plan for the rainwater event that we already know we have routinely. We can't attenuate it all. I think the most effective way to attenuate the stormwater issue for this parcel is to keep it zoned NPD. I'd be happy to answer questions. There are a lot of figures. I'm not an engineer. I'd love to see what the engineer proposes. But as again, I think that's irrelevant. I think we need to keep it NPD for all the reasons my neighbors have articulated. Thank you. Mr. Walden, you're up next.
Hey guys, Forrest Walden, live at 3100 Whitehall. So when you were looking at the picture of Mr. Shaw's driveway, you were actually seeing my house. I live directly behind Mr. Shaw. We've always referred to it as a paper alley. There's never been access. It's a paper alley to nowhere, so there is no access. It goes straight into some type of storm runoff creek area behind us. We actually, Mr. Shaw put a bridge and we added a gate because people do come through his yard and our driveway quite frequently, but it's not currently there. So yeah, that's my house right back there. So a couple of things. The storm runoff is a real issue. Our youngest son, Benjamin, got swept down the storm drain in Overton Park a couple years ago. And if a neighbor had not stuck a ladder down the manhole, he might not have made it. It was terrible. So real issue. He's not allowed to the park when it rains anymore. And then we just took the liberty of going around the neighborhood and just getting everybody's vote and how they felt about this, and just as a visual to show the overwhelming adverse response to this whole project that can let you know how our neighborhood feels about it and the proposed R7. And additionally, we border that R7 at Mayfair Circle, and if she can do it, then we can do it. And then you've got that issue on Whitehall as well.
And the blanks on the map are people we could not contact. It wasn't that they were poor.
I'm Mike Hubbard. I'm live on Mayfair Circle. I'm president of the Homeowners Association there. I get nervous when I talk to people.
That's okay, no nerves here.
First, I want you to know nobody on the Mayfair Circle wants that to be R7. They've all signed, and it's been sent to the city. Be sent again. Can I get the plan view of the proposed layout? Is that possible? So when Mayfair Circle was built, setbacks on both sides.
So this pointer right here.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Setbacks on this side of the street, setbacks on the side of the street I live, I think 14 foot 5 inches was the minimum that we could build up against the property line. The way the new zoning stuff's set up, they can go to 0 right here. That puts them looking right down into the backyards of 2 of our residents. And also, I guess if this resident right here wanted to, she could do the same thing. I don't know what the building codes would say about that for fire issues, but it could be an issue. I just want to touch on 2 other things that people have mentioned. This week and prior weeks, I've spent a total of about 4 hours down here researching the records in the zoning office. And this was built, the street paved, and the gutters put in for drainage. After that was done, 2 residences on Overton down in the middle of the swag flooded because that water goes into a ditch that goes on down and goes through Overton Park. After the units were built, 2 units in Mayfair Circle flooded. Mine's one of them, and the one across the street from it flooded because of just what was talked about by water. The other thing is, I don't know how the codes were set up when this was built, when ours was built. All of our garages face Mayfair Circle Drive. All the garages face the back of this proposed building. Every time a car comes around this curve at night, there's going to be lights going in the back of these houses. All of these houses are going to have outside lighting. I know there's ordinances about outside lighting and it has to be turned off, but there's going to be cars coming in. I remember what I've read, there can be up to 9 automobiles going up and down that little back road. It's going to be a nuisance to these homeowners. This is a major issue for me personally. The other thing I just want to point out is, what if Jenny Allen gets the council to change this to R7 and sells it to some developer? Here we go again.
We've got 2 more minutes. Anyone else wants to speak?
Yeah, we got one more.
Spirit of time, I'll just go ahead and start. But I'm Jeremy Berman. I'm 3106 Overton Drive, so about catty corner to this development. And I was going to refer the committee to the definition of an alley. He already did that for me, and he said a public way less than within a street designed for the special accommodation of the property reaches and not intended for general travel. That's the definition of the alley from the Homewood's ordinance, and I would specify it's a public way, which, as you've seen, in this day and age, it is not. And I guess I would also like to appreciate the fact that the arguments that was made at the last committee meeting, none of those showed up in this speech. Using 1923 maps, calling it age and place. We didn't hear anything about that in this time. So I think that just points to the misleading that's going on here, and that they are trying to tailor the argument to make it seem most likely when that's not the original plan. So everything else I have to say pretty much has already been said, except actually, I'm sorry, one last thing would be, despite the fact that she is claiming to not be a part of Overton Drive on the new development, the drive would still be on Overton Drive, as would the mailboxes. So I assume the addresses would still be Overton Drive, and not Archmore Road if the new development were to pass. So that is all I have to say. I guess we're probably out of time anyway. So.
Yeah, it's perfect time. Yeah, if you will sign in, and thank you all. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, we do have a public hearing set for next Monday night at 6 o'clock in the chambers next door. So I would entertain a motion to send out without recommendation pending that public hearing.
Mrs. Andrews?
Yes.
Could I get up just for a second to just, because this happened last time where I did my presentation and then they rebuffed a lot of the things that were presented with information that seemed factual information, but it maybe isn't. So I didn't know if I could have just a few seconds or minutes to at least comment on some of them. Some of them dealing with the stormwater and impervious nature of the coding.
I'd say, I would say let's wait for next week for that.
Okay.
If you will, I'd say let's wait for next
Okay,
week for that. Yeah.
okay.
We're gonna, you are not gonna be under time limit next week, I would presume.
Okay.
It does.
Maybe not,
Yeah,
President White.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
I expect that there will be some time limits next week, but certainly the applicant will be given the chance to respond
Yeah, I'd say.
to questions that come up, but I do think we will try to
Tonight's
move
more of a presentation.
expeditiously next week.
Next week is the real deal.
Okay.
So that being said,
I make a motion to send out without recommendation pending the public hearing.
okay, so I have a motion from Counselor Sims, a second from Counselor Nelms. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
We still 4, right?
Yeah, 4.
Okay.
Okay, that passes 4-0, and we will see everybody next week, next door at 6 o'clock. Okay, new business, 040123, public hearing set for February 13th, 2023 at 6 p.m. for consideration of rezone 2900 16th Place South from R5 attached dwelling unit district to an NPD neighborhood preservation district. The applicant is Johnny Gossett, owner Bonnie O'Bannon, to permit construction of a new single-family house. Planning Commission had a vote of 7-0 for a favorable recommendation. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, so this, exactly what you said, I'm gonna turn it over to Jason Hill, who is the home builder. You'll speak to this, I'm sure, but the city recently condemned. So,
Thanks. Just glad that wasn't about me.
You're the opposite.
You're the exact opposite of what that is. Oh.
Yeah. I think that looks
great.
That was.
Oh, baby.
Wait, that was.
Just finished it. We're putting it on the market soon.
They probably
So that was zoned R5.
Yes.
Is it because it's adjacent to the
I guess.
apartments, I guess?
Yeah, I don't really.
Well, no, I mean, I could always see it, but I just wonder, I didn't know it was zoned that way. I guess because it's next to those apartments.
Yeah.
That's weird.
It is weird.
That is weird.
So
and there's another parcel
correct.
adjacent to it that's also R5.
Yep.
Is that behind where the
It's not
garage used to
included in
be?
this, but it probably.
So they're
Where the
yeah
garage
they're
was?
gonna deed. So what's going on? Johnny's not in here. I don't see him. I just met Johnny, but anyway, Johnny got to know Mrs. Homeowner, and I think he thought he was gonna renovate it. I think that he realized that wasn't a good idea. He called us, and I said, "Well, I've actually wanted that property for years, so I live nearby this." And I found out they also own a little sliver of land on the other side of it. They're going to deed it over, but I didn't need to redo all of this because I'm kind of going forward, not needing that little tiny sliver, and it could be thrown in and maybe rezoned or something in the future. But for what we're trying to do, I'm happy just dealing with a piece of property that is in discussion today. We had a survey done, realized what it was zoned. The setbacks on that cause a lot of issues. Because it is an odd shaped property, it starts slimming as it goes that way quite a bit. And the setbacks, quite frankly, are different than MPD. I think they're like 35 and maybe 15 side or something like that. Whereas MPD on this would be roughly 25 front, which is this side over here. And this is a wider lot, so it would be 10 and 10. Which becomes important as you get back here in this area where it really crosses towards this street and gets thins out. So, quite frankly, it should be MPD. I don't even know why it's R5. We want to build a single family residence. Seems kind of straightforward. I think everybody I've talked to is in favor of it. And that's really it.
Jason, does the house, I don't know, I can't tell from that house. Yeah, does it orient to Somerset?
It orients to the blue house way up there.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
it faces, it's
Yeah,
the front door
that's
technically.
that's the front here,
Okay.
and this is the side,
Okay.
and then we just finished the three houses.
Yeah, right there
Right
across.
there, yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, that one's finished now, so.
And is that considered a street, or is that just the driveway from the apartments?
It's an alley.
What's the definition of an alley,
I
Walter?
don't really know what it is.
I'd like
I
you
don't
to
know
recite
what
that
this
for me,
is.
please.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's all kind of weird.
I guess
right
it's a
there.
street.
Yeah, I guess,
So
well, I
it
guess that is
runs
a
on
street
that
sign
alley
right there.
street?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, we plan to put parking
I was like, really?
probably down here, down that way.
Back where the old the old garage was.
Yeah,
Is it all thrown up around there and you couldn't see it?
It was, I think the city
Yeah, we cleaned it
required
out.
it to be cleared out.
We didn't require it, we did it.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah, and
Did you
then
pay that lien off
the
already?
city was supposed to demolish it, but I think it's on hold pending kind of all this, to be honest with you.
Yeah, have you closed that yet? Have you purchased
No,
it?
mine's all subject to this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yay.
because I don't want it if it's
If it,
R5.
yeah, right.
Just to be honest.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen,
Yeah.
I appreciate that you are doing it that way, because we have a lot of people who do it the opposite way, and then they can't get it rezoned,
Yeah.
and then they're stuck with something that they can't
10
rezone.
years in Homewood doing this, you
You
do
kind of learn a
one or
few
two
tricks,
things,
yeah. We appreciate that.
Anybody have any questions?
I make a recommendation to send it out, or no, wait.
Yes,
The
without
motion to Send it
recommendation.
out without recommendation,
Second.
pending the public hearing.
That's
Sorry,
right.
guys.
All right, motion from Counselor Sims,
Second.
second from Counselor Wolverton. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And that passes 4-0. Okay, we'll see you on the 13th at 6 o'clock next door.
13th.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
y'all.
You're on the same night that they're.
No, no,
Happy
it's
New
not.
Year. All
Yeah, I
right,
was
without
thinking I'd be
objection,
first on the
we are
docket.
adjourned.